Take a book in your hands and let it become your compass. My friend, what if today you learn about 7 books that didn't just change my mind, but literally pulled me out of the abyss of failures and gave me a new destiny? I've reread one of them more than 20 times. Another one made me get up at 5 in the morning. Yet another taught me how to win, even when everything around me screamed, give up. This list isn't just names on covers. These are 7 keys that can open your own doors too. Don't rush, wait for the finale, because at the end, I'll give you one simple trick that will turn any book into your personal mental gym. And now, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's set off for the true alchemy of thought. All right, my friend, now imagine this. You're sitting in a cramped room, holding your destiny in your hands, but you don't feel any control over it. No money, 0 prospects, darkness in your soul. That's exactly how I felt one autumn evening. It seemed like the world had forgotten about me and I had forgotten about myself. And it's precisely in that moment when it feels like there's nowhere to go that life whispers to you, pick up a new tool. Don't look for strength in what no longer works. In my case, that tool was a book. But not just a book, a whole universe of new ideas, examples, and rules that are nothing like school textbooks. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why do some people reach the top while others wander in the shadows? What is that invisible code that changes not just a bank account, but the entire course of a life? I searched for this answer as desperately as a person looks for water in the desert. And I found the answer in simple, sometimes even old-fashioned, but real books that don't just turn the calendar page, but turn your consciousness upside down. Let me confess right away, I was a skeptic. I didn't believe that a few lines on paper could change the path of a farm boy from Idaho. But then a moment came, someone recommended Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, to me. I didn't read it for fun. I read it like a breath of fresh air after a long underwater dive. It became the first signal. Your reality is a reflection of how you think. Do you know what turned out to be the most powerful revelation? Thoughts are material, but not in some mystical sense. They become actions, and actions become results. That's why the first thing I advised every one of my students was, read this book not just once, but until you start to notice how your thoughts change your wallet, your relationships, your horizons. I asked myself, am I ready to put these principles into practice every day, or will I just leave them on the shelf along with unrealized dreams? The second book that became my silent friend was Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. I remember the first time I saw it on my mentor Earl Shelf's desk. Back then, I didn't believe that a soft cover and simple tips about communication could radically change a business. But the truth turned out to be different. It turned out you could be a genius in your field, but if you don't know how to get along with people, your genius remains unknown to the world. Carnegie taught me, the best opportunities appear when you're able to listen, when you don't just talk about yourself, but show interest in the stories of others. My first big deals, my best partners, all of it wasn't the result of chance, but the result of being able to build relationships. You've probably noticed yourself, sometimes one kind word, one smile opens more doors than hundreds of resumes or diplomas, but that was only the beginning. The third book I placed on my desk was The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason. Imagine, an ancient city, wise men, simple parables. But it was these simple parables that changed my attitude toward money. I realized wealth is not an accident, but the result of discipline, principles, and the habit of saving at least a little, even from the smallest income. I started to treat money like seeds. You have to plant them, protect them from the weeds of expenses, and only then reap the harvest. The secret is to start now with what you have. Don't wait until you have $1,000. Start with one. This simple idea turned my finances around and allowed me, after a few years, to get out of debt, build up capital, and for the first time taste financial freedom. The fourth book is the Bible, especially the book of Proverbs. I'm not talking about religion, I'm talking about principles that work beyond time. Honesty, perseverance, gratitude, humility, caring for others. I found all these qualities in every great entrepreneur I've had the honor to work with. The Bible taught me the main thing. Your morality and your ethics are the foundation of any business. Without this, any success is fragile, like a house of cards. In the hardest moments, I went back to Proverbs to remind myself, big changes begin with small steps, and big victories start with inner purity. We'll continue on this journey, my friend. But even now, think, Is there a book in your life that you still underestimate? Isn't it time to return to it and give it a chance to change your path? Because believe me, the most powerful discoveries happen when it seems like you've already seen and heard it all. And remember, at the end of this video, I'll share with you the technique that will help you not just read, but apply knowledge in life, so that every page becomes a step toward your new story. Don't stop, the most interesting part is still ahead. Imagine how your life would change if you could not only read these books, but actually live out each principle, build it into your thinking and your actions. Because, the real miracle doesn't happen when you finish the last page, but when those lines become your new habit. That's exactly what happened to me, and here are the next chapters of my story. I often emphasize, thoughts shape actions, actions shape habits, habits shape destiny. But how do you begin to change yourself? The fifth book from my golden list gave me the answer I'd been searching for my whole life. It's As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. Maybe you've heard the title before, but trust me, until you open it, you have no idea how profoundly it can impact your inner voice. Allen said, "A person is literally what he thinks." For a long time, I couldn't grasp this simple yet shocking truth. My failures, my fears, even my financial struggles, all of them started with the thought, I can't do it. I'm not worthy. It's too hard. After discovering this book, every morning I didn't just set goals, but paid close attention to what I thought about myself, about people, about the future. It turned out that right there in my inner monologue, either defeat or victory is born. By changing my thoughts, I became a completely different person, calmer, more confident, ready to move forward, even when the path seemed foggy. But changing your thinking is only the beginning. For true transformation, you need not only to think big, but also to dare to act big. I still remember the moment I picked up The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. Oh, if only you knew how many times I caught myself thinking, this isn't for me. You need talent for this. I'm just an ordinary farm boy, not a big company leader. That's when I came across this book, and it literally knocked me out of my little comfort zone. Schwartz taught, the scariest thing is thinking small, shrinking yourself into boxes. Big success comes not to those who carefully plan every step and avoid risk, but to those who allow themselves to dream and act boldly. After this book, I took on projects that had seemed impossible for the first time. I learned to say yes to big opportunities, even when my heart was trembling. You know what happened next? People who thought the same way appeared in my life, and together we created truly great things. There's one more story I never get tired of telling. Once a good friend of mine who had no money, no connections, not even a clear plan, said to me, "Jim, I'm always waiting for the perfect moment when everything lines up, when I have enough knowledge, when I have confidence." I shared the seventh book from my list with him, Acres of Diamonds by Russell Conwell. It's a small yet incredibly powerful parable book about how all the wealth, all the great opportunities are already around you. You just don't see them. We're used to thinking that the grass is greener somewhere else, that big chances are always about someone else. But the truth is, your acres of diamonds are hidden right under your feet. Your ideas, your talents, your circle of acquaintances, your family, your experience. After that conversation, my friend didn't move to a big city in search of happiness. He saw the value in what he already had and turned it into a real business. My friend, are you still here? Because now I want to address you directly. What books are on your shelf? Are you letting them gather dust? I know how easy it is to wake up in the morning and think, today's not the day for reading. I'll get around to it someday. But real change doesn't come as inspiration, but as habit. Every morning I started with 10 pages, even if I thought I wouldn't remember anything. I wrote down the main ideas in a journal and noticed how day by day those ideas grew into actions, decisions, new results. I remember one time at a seminar, a young guy with a sparkle in his eye came up to me. He said, "Jim, I want to change my life, but I don't know where to start." I asked him, "What are you reading?" He shyly answered, "Probably too much news and other people's advice on social media." And then I gave him the most important advice. What you fill your mind with, you become. Give yourself a chance for a different stream of information. Start with a great book, and life will bring you its own stories from there. When times were especially hard, when it felt like I was back at rock bottom, I remembered the words from the Bible. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. That became my mantra. I started not just dreaming, but acting, and results came when I'd already stopped expecting them. People often ask me, Jim, do you read books for the quotes or for the action? I always answer, quotes inspire, but only actions change your life. That's why these 7 books are not just my favorites, they are my tools for real transformation. And here's one more observation. Each of these books, at different times, gave me different wisdom. When I was in debt, The Richest Man in Babylon taught me discipline. When I lacked confidence, the magic of thinking big broke through the walls of fear. When I wanted to find my way in relationships, Carnegie opened up the power of human hearts. When I searched for meaning in the darkness, Proverbs from the Bible lifted my spirit. No book will become your magic pill, but each one is a piece of the big mosaic you put together throughout your life. Now I want you to pause for a moment and think, which of these books will you pick up first? Are you ready to promise yourself to finish at least one, to put at least one idea into practice this week? Remember, success doesn't come to the one who knows all the answers, but to the one who's willing to ask themselves the right questions and take action. You can change your path today. And don't forget, at the end of the video, I'll share the practice that made me not just a reader, but the creator of my own story. Still hesitating? Let these books become your new start, your inner mentor, your ticket to a world of opportunities that once seemed closed. Because if they could do it, you can do even more. And all you need is to take the first step, wait for the finale, and you'll learn how to make that step as powerful as possible. My friend, are you still here? Because right now we're moving on to the part where these books become not just a story, but a real living key to a new life. I want you to feel not just inspired, but truly challenged. Imagine yourself a year from now. Will you be able to say, I became a different person because of the ideas I started to put into practice today? That's why each of these 7 books was never just read for me. They became my personal trainer, sometimes strict, sometimes compassionate, but always demanding of my thinking and my daily choices. I remember the first moment I started applying the principles from Think and Grow Rich. At that time, I didn't have a business or stable income, but every morning I'd sit down with a sheet of paper and write out goals that seemed wild, even fantastic. Hill taught me, if you don't know where you're going, you'll always end up somewhere else. I wrote out my main goal, and what's important, I began to see myself as already being the person I wanted to become. My whole life changed then, not because everything around me suddenly got easier, but because clarity appeared inside me, and for the first time in my life, responsibility. Today, looking back, I understand if you don't control your focus, someone else will do it for you. And books are your personal defense against the chaos of the world. But let's talk honestly. Are there moments when it seems like change is just too hard and you're too tired to start over? I know that feeling, and that's exactly when the power of small steps comes to the rescue, as described in every great book. The Richest Man in Babylon taught me not to dream of sudden breakthroughs, but to build wealth penny by penny, habit by habit. I started setting aside at least 10% from every income, even when those incomes seemed laughable. Do you know what happened next? Instead of hopelessness, I felt control over my life. And then that control turned into confidence, and confidence into action. And eventually I learned not to depend on circumstances, but to create my own rules of the game. That's the essence of ancient wisdom. Discipline, consistency, patience. Why do people so often ignore such simple things? Because it seems to them that a real breakthrough should be loud, unexpected, with fanfare. But the truth is, the loudest victories grow out of quiet mornings when you do what you must, even if no one sees it. That's when real results come. More than once I've had to review Carnegie's lessons and go back to basics. How to listen, how to ask questions, how to acknowledge others' successes. I've been knocked down by failures in relationships, in teams, in negotiations. And you know what? The solutions were usually not in complicated schemes or clever tactics, but in genuine interest in the person. Carnegie convinced me, in a world where everyone wants to be heard, the greatest power is to learn to listen. It may seem like a simple idea, but it gave me friends, partners, and students for life. Do you remember how, as a child, it seemed that somewhere out there in the future, there's a perfect day when everything will come together? Then you grow up and realize the perfect moment will never come. And that's when the magic of thinking big fell into my hands. It taught me to stop waiting until I'm good enough and to start acting right now with the confidence that everyone lacks at the beginning. I began telling myself, why Why not be the one who leads instead of the one who stays in the shadows? And that's not just a slogan, it's a shift in thinking that day by day turns into real achievements. By the way, for a long time I couldn't understand why people turned to the Bible during difficult periods in their lives. Wasn't it just an old-fashioned book? But when life brought me to my knees, when I needed not just another recipe for success, but peace, humility, endurance, it was Proverbs that gave me direction. There are truths there that haven't lost their power for thousands of years. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full, meaning your strength is not limitless, but your problems aren't eternal either. The Bible became my textbook of inner strength, because external achievements are worthless if you don't have peace inside. Have you ever wondered why some people are always searching for happiness somewhere else in other cities, in new projects, in someone else's dreams? That's what Acres of Diamonds talks about. I've met many people who chased illusions, spent years pursuing someone else's happiness, while the real opportunity was in their hands, but they didn't notice it. That book taught me to be grateful for what I have and to pay attention to my own talents. When you start to value your own place, your family, your skills, life opens new doors. Something else amazing happened to me after discovering As a Man Thinketh. I started to feel not just inspired, but responsible. My thoughts aren't just background noise, but the true engine of my entire life. I made it a habit to review every evening what I'd been thinking about during the day. Were those thoughts encouraging, or did they drag me down? And the most interesting thing, the more I trained myself to notice the negative, the easier it was to change it to something constructive. It's like being a gardener. You can't stop the weeds, but you can plant flowers. Instead of fighting fears, I started filling my head with ideas that lead to action. My friend, I want you to understand, each of these books became my personal story, not just a source of wisdom. They were with me in the darkest nights and the brightest dawns. And here's the paradox. The more I returned to familiar pages, the more new answers I found there, as if the authors spoke to me in a different voice each time. That's why you shouldn't read these books just to check a box, take one, and implement it, even if you have to reread it 10 times. Now, maybe you're thinking, I don't have much time, this all sounds good, but how do I start? I always say, don't wait until you have time, make time yourself. 10 pages a day, and in a year, you'll be the person you admire in books today. And here's another tip from my own experience. Don't be ashamed to choose a book that speaks to your heart. Sometimes you don't need the smartest advice, but the most timely one. You feel which book can help you right now, and that's always the right choice. There's one more step left, the very practice that makes reading a true ritual of transformation. Wait for it, and I'll show you how a book becomes not just read, but embodied in your reality. Because the main thing isn't so much to know as to do, and you're already on your way. My friend, we've now reached that point where words don't just inspire, they begin to demand action. After all, every great idea, every principle, every lesson from these 7 books only comes alive when you start weaving it into your days, even if it feels uncomfortable or strange. I've always said, wisdom isn't what you know, it's what you do with what you know. And in this sense, books become not just textbooks, but a source of true personal power. Let's go back for a moment to that young man I was at 25, confused, angry at myself and the world, but stubborn in my desire to break out of a dead end. Honestly, in those years, I dreamed more than I acted. The dreams were sweet, but life was prosaic. Bills, debts, the fear of making mistakes again. But one day, holding Think and Grow Rich in my hands, I wrote down my main goal for the first time. It wasn't just a goal, it was a promise to myself that I'd take at least one small step so I wouldn't remain the same person I was yesterday. Every morning I'd reread that list, and gradually it began to rewrite me from the inside. I stopped making excuses. I started to act. Herein lies the main secret of success: discipline. People have often asked me, Jim, were you always this organized? Not at all, but it was books that built this habit in me day by day. The richest man in Babylon taught me a simple rule: pay yourself first. It may seem like a small thing, but when you start putting aside even 10% every month, you begin to feel a sense of control. You're not just a consumer, you're the creator of your financial story. I began to see every dollar not as money, but as seed for a future harvest. This simple idea helped me get out of debt, build up capital, and eventually start my own business. Do you know what was the hardest thing during this period? Overcoming my inner limitations. Because the biggest traps aren't other people's words or circumstances, they're our own beliefs. That's why James Allen's book, As a Man Thinketh, was especially important to me. For the first time, I truly looked at my thoughts from the outside. I realized everything that happens in my life starts with a thought. If I think like a victim, I live like a victim. If I think like a creator, I start looking for a way out, even where others don't see one. I began monitoring my inner dialogue, writing down negative statements and deliberately replacing them with constructive ones. Over time, this practice gave me extraordinary strength. I stopped fearing the future because I knew I was guiding it from within. Another great victory came to me thanks to David Schwartz's The Magic of Thinking Big. I was never one of those who liked taking risks just for the sake of risk. I valued stability. But this book made me see the fear of thinking big, the fear of truly dreaming, is the most dangerous trap. You'll never grow bigger than your boldest dreams. I started allowing myself to want more. Better partnerships, deeper relationships, new projects. Even when I didn't have the resources, I learned to act as if I already did. Paradoxically, it's exactly this mindset, being in the big game before you actually get there, that opens doors which stay closed for others. When I look back on all these periods, I realize all of them were connected to people. No idea, no matter how good, works in a vacuum. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People became my kind of roadmap in the world of relationships. I learned not just to speak, but to listen, to acknowledge the value of the person I was talking to be interested in their dreams, needs, fears. That doesn't mean every day was filled with harmony. I made mistakes, lost partners, sometimes felt disappointment. But the more often I returned to Carnegie's simple truths, the more often people appeared in my life who became not just acquaintances, but like-minded people, real allies on the journey. I could talk for a long time about the power of biblical proverbs. It was in the darkest times that I opened them and found in them what no modern book could give: patience, inner stillness, the wisdom to wait, and to be grateful for small joys. Because even the biggest breakthrough in business means nothing if you're empty inside, if you're losing loved ones, if your heart is filled with anxiety. Proverbs taught me, your foundation is your values, your actions, your ability to distinguish what's real from what's illusory. When crises happened in my life, it was returning to eternal principles that gave me the strength to get back up and move forward. You know, one of the most unexpected lessons came from Russell Conwell's Acres of Diamonds. It's not just about wealth, but about gratitude, about the ability to notice opportunities nearby. For too long, I looked for happiness out there in the future, in big cities and other people's achievements. But the real breakthrough happened when I started to value everything I already had: my skills, my relationships, even my difficulties. I realized the most precious diamonds aren't with someone else, but inside each of us. You just have to spot them, start watering and protecting them like a little sprout in a field of weeds. At this moment, you might feel anxious or even doubtful. Can I really put these ideas into practice in my own life? I always answer, if I could do it, an ordinary guy from Idaho, if millions before me could, you can too. And not just can, you'll do it even better. But don't fool yourself. There won't be a perfect moment. There won't be a magical instant when all the circumstances line up perfectly. Start now with what you have, where you are. And now let me give you my most powerful practice, the one that helped me not just read books, but transform myself through them. At the end of each day, I'd ask myself 3 questions. What did I learn today? What did I put into practice? What is one small change I'm ready to make tomorrow? It may seem small, but if you answer honestly and regularly, you'll see how gradually your character, your results, your environment start to change. My friend, you've already done the most important thing you've dared to seek, to ask, to listen, to read. The only thing left is the most crucial implementation. Don't stop, even if the changes seem small, because it's exactly these small changes that create great destinies. And remember, at the end of our journey, I'll give you those questions that test not only your discipline, but your belief in yourself. Be ready. Your transformation begins right now. Imagine, you're no longer just listening, but actually feeling an inner movement, a new energy being born within you. Because the power of the 7 great books is not in the pages, not in the old covers, and not in the trendy quotes. The real power is in your ability to weave this wisdom into the fabric of your own day. I've met many people in my life who could recite these books by heart, but their lives remained unchanged. I was the same, until one day I realized knowledge is only a smoldering fire, but action is the flame that warms and lights the way. I've already said, when I started practicing the principles from Think and Grow Rich, the world around me stayed the same, but I myself became new. This book taught me the main thing, not just to set goals, but to force myself to act, even when I didn't feel like it, even when there were no immediate results. I wrote down my goals every day. Every morning I read them aloud, even if it was quiet all around and it seemed like no one was listening but me. And do you know what happened? Not only did my focus change, my character changed as well. I became less dependent on praise, less sensitive to criticism, more focused on the path instead of my emotions. And here's what's interesting. It's in those moments when you're truly dedicated to the process, the world starts to respond. Maybe not with money or status right away, but with people, with chance conversations that show you the next step. But it's one thing to have a goal, it's another not to lose yourself on the way to it. This is where As a Man Thinketh became crucial in my life. For a long time, I didn't understand a simple thing. You can't create a happy life if you allow negativity and fear to settle in your mind. I started experimenting. In the morning, I'd catch my first thoughts and analyze where they came from. Are these my thoughts or someone else's? Do they serve me? You'd be surprised how much of what goes on in your head is actually echoes of the past, fears from childhood, complexes that can be rewritten. I trained myself to catch negativity, to change it to a different question. How can I use this situation to my advantage? My energy changed, and along with it, my results. But change doesn't come to those who only think. The magic of thinking big reminded me that great success is always a risk. I learned to say yes to big ideas, even if they scared me to the core. It was exactly this habit, not running away from the new, but seeking a challenge in it that made me step outside my comfort zone. My first big negotiation, speaking on stage in front of hundreds, traveling to new countries, all this started with a simple thought: what if I give myself a chance? Fear never completely disappears, but every time you act despite it, you grow. All these breakthroughs would have been impossible without the people around me. How to Win Friends and Influence People was more than just a book about relationships. It taught me to pay attention to details, to see the strength in each person, to pray sincerely, to not be ashamed to ask questions and learn from others. I realized the most valuable thing is not just to speak, but to listen. Sometimes one compliment, one genuine thank you changes the story of an acquaintance, and sometimes even a destiny. I remember a time when everything was going wrong. Failures poured in, businesses collapsed, energy was running out. That's when I returned to the Bible, to the book of Proverbs, and there I found things as simple as water, but sharp as a blade. Guard your heart above all else, for from it flows the wellspring of life. This phrase became my guide. You can lose money, lose friends, but if you lose yourself, if you let your heart be poisoned by resentment or anger, you lose everything. I learned to forgive myself, to forgive others, to be grateful even for difficult lessons. These principles saved my relationships more than once, kept me together during the deepest losses. Another lesson I received from The Richest Man in Babylon. It taught me the discipline of small daily steps. I was impatient, wanted everything at once, but this book showed me. Wealth is not an explosion, but a gentle rain, drop by drop filling the river. I started keeping records of my expenses, saving even from the smallest incomes. You might not believe it, but this simple action gradually created the foundation on which everything else was built: finances, new projects, and a sense of self-worth. Acres of diamonds holds a special place in my life. I met people who, not knowing this parable, spent years searching for a better place, another job, an easier fate. But in fact, the greatest opportunities were always nearby, in the talents we undervalue, in connections that seem ordinary. I learned to look at the world with new eyes. When you begin to gratefully value what you have, a new energy for creation appears. New people come into your life, and doors open that you never even imagined. My friend, all this isn't theory. This is the story of thousands of people I've had the honor of seeing at my seminars, listening to in halls all over the world. One day a woman came up to me. She had lost her job, her family, her confidence. She cried, "Jim, I'm worth nothing now." I gave her one simple tool: start a journal and every night write down 3 things she could be grateful for, even on the hardest days. A month later, she came back a completely different person. Her speech changed. She started to notice opportunities where she once saw only obstacles. True transformation is a process, not an event. Don't think everything will fall into place in a single day, but if you, like I once did, agree to give these books a chance and not just read them, but try even one idea today in a year, you'll be amazed at how far you can go. That's why, my friend, I ask, don't just listen to me, don't just listen to others. Act. Pick one book from this list, start today, write down the first idea in your day, put it into practice, and see what changes. And what changes will be, without a doubt, much more than you can imagine. Next comes the practical part, the very one I promised at the beginning, and it will be your true start because these books are only keys, but you are the one who opens the doors. And now, my friend, it's time to take the most important step, not just to listen, but to put yourself to the test in practice. The true power of knowledge is revealed only when you start applying it, analyzing it, letting it pass through you. Here I offer you a little interactive exercise, 5 simple questions for self-assessment. Answer quickly, honestly, from the heart. Don't pause the video. Don't try to invent perfect answers. Choose from 1 to 10, where 1 means not at all my level, and 10 means this is already part of me. This is not an exam, but a mirror you look into for a minute to see your real starting point. Ready? Then let's go. First question, how regularly do you pick up a book instead of scrolling through social media when you're searching for answers to life's questions? Rate yourself on the scale. If your hand automatically reaches for your smartphone, choose a lower score. If a book is your first friend in the search for meaning, feel free to choose a higher number, because this is where your new information hygiene begins. Second, do you apply at least one idea from what you've read in your life, or do you keep knowledge just in case? Give yourself a score. If you're just reading, that's 1 level. If you've put even something into practice, raise your score. Here, your honesty is your foundation, because between what you read and what you do lies your entire future path. Third, how do you react to failure? Do you blame circumstances, or do you look for the answer within yourself? Think about it. How often do you say, "It's not me, it's them"? Or can you say, "This is my growth zone. What can I change in myself?" If it's the latter, rate yourself higher, because this is where maturity and true responsibility are born. Fourth, is there someone in your life you're grateful to for advice, support, or criticism? Give yourself a score from "I do everything myself" to "I've learned to accept wisdom from others," because an open heart is not a weakness, but your main resource for growth. And fifth, do you believe that your future really depends on what you fill your mind with today? Give yourself a score, because only when belief comes before action does that inner engine for change appear. I know these questions sound simple, but if you answered honestly, you've already taken a huge step. These 5 metaphorical mirrors show you where to start. Don't rush, don't overanalyze. Once you've answered, move on. And after the video, I recommend going back and going through these questions again, but this time not as a listener, but as a doer. Because the main thing I want to leave you with today is your honesty with yourself. Don't stop. You're already closer to a new version of yourself than you think. My friend, remember, life is not a rehearsal. You are writing your story here and now, and every day is another page you can fill with wisdom, action, real change. All these books, all these ideas, they're only keys, but you are the one who opens the real doors. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't look for inspiration outside. You already have everything you need to start the desire, the ability to learn, the strength to act. Tomorrow will be different if today you take even 1 step toward your new self. As I once said, don't hope it will get easier, become stronger. Your change is in your hands. Read, implement, act, because you are the author of your own destiny. And by the way, if you have a favorite book or your own story of change, write about it in the comments. I'm truly interested to read your thoughts. Give this video a like if it was useful to you. And don't forget to subscribe. Together, we can create a community here of people of action, not just words. See you in the next story. There's still so much ahead that can change your day.